On August 18, 2025, former President Donald Trump announced a baseless and alarming plan to eliminate mail-in ballots in voting machines, falsely claiming they undermine election integrity. This rhetoric, rooted in disinformation and amplified by foreign influence, threatens the core of American democracy. Simultaneously, Trump's foreign policy, particularly his deference to Russian President Vladimir Putin and pressure on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, signals a dangerous capitulation to authoritarian agendas. As Democrats, we must mobilize to protect our electoral system and stand firm against policies that weaken our global standing and democratic values. The assault on mail-in voting and election integrity. Donald Trump's recent announcement to lead a movement to eliminate mail-in ballots in voting machines is a direct attack on the democratic process. This claim, made in a lengthy Truth Social post, falsely asserts that mail-in voting in voting machines are inherently fraudulent, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Mail-in voting is one of the safest and most secure methods of casting ballots, with rigorous verification processes that ensure accuracy. Studies from institutions like the Brennan Center for Justice have consistently shown that voter fraud, including through mail-in ballots, is exceedingly rare, occurring in less than 0.003% of votes cast. Trump himself has voted by mail multiple times and encouraged his supporters to do so in the 2024 election, a contradiction that exposes his hypocrisy. The attack on voting machines is equally baseless. Trump's reference to highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines echoes the debunked conspiracies that led to Fox News' $787 million settlement with Dominion voting systems in 2023. Dominion's machines were falsely accused of flipping votes in the 2020 election, a claim that failed to hold up in over 60 court cases. The settlement underscored the lack of evidence for widespread fraud, yet Trump persists in spreading these lies to undermine public trust in elections. His rhetoric aligns with a broader Republican strategy to sow doubt about democratic institutions, paving the way for restrictive voting laws that disproportionately harm marginalized communities. This attack on mail-in voting and voting machines also disregards the principle of states' rights, a cornerstone of conservative ideology. Election administration is constitutionally delegated to the states, and the federal government, including the president, lacks the authority to unilaterally eliminate mail-in voting or mandate changes to voting systems. Trump's proposal is not only legally unfeasible, but also a betrayal of the federalism that Republicans claim to champion. This hypocrisy is evident in other areas, such as abortion and gun rights, where conservative rhetoric on states' rights evaporates when it conflicts with their policy goals. Foreign influence and Trump's deference to Putin, perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Trump's election rhetoric, is its apparent origin in foreign influence. In a Fox News interview following a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump openly admitted to discussing mail-in voting with the authoritarian leader. According to Trump, Putin claimed that mail-in ballots were responsible for rigging U.S. elections, a narrative Trump eagerly adopted. This is particularly egregious given Putin's well-documented history of manipulating elections in Russia, where he routinely secures implausible vote margins, such as 87% in the 2024 Russian presidential election, according to the Levada Center. Idea that the President of the United States would take cues on election integrity from a dictator who suppresses dissent and jails political opponents is both alarming and dangerous. Putin's regime has a vested interest in destabilizing Western democracies, and his comments to Trump appear designed to exploit existing divisions in the U.S. By parroting Putin's narrative, Trump is not only undermining American democracy, but also aligning himself with a foreign adversary who seeks to weaken the United States' global influence. This deference to Putin extends beyond election rhetoric to Trump's foreign policy, particularly regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump's recent statements and actions demonstrate a troubling pattern of capitulating to Putin while pressuring Ukraine's President Zelenskyy. In a Truth Social post, Trump claimed that Zelenskyy could end the war with Russia almost immediately by capitulating to Russian demands, such as ceding Crimea and abandoning NATO aspirations. This stance ignores the reality that Russia, under Putin's leadership, initiated the war by invading Ukraine in 2022, illegally annexing territory, and committing atrocities, including the abduction of over 30,000 Ukrainian children, as reported by the United Nations. Trump's rhetoric places the burden of peace on Zelenskyy, effectively victim-blaming a leader defending his nation against unprovoked aggression. This approach contrasts sharply with the Democratic Party's commitment to supporting Ukraine through military and humanitarian aid, as evidenced by the $61 billion aid package approved by Congress in 2024. By siding with Putin, Trump undermines not only Ukraine's sovereignty, but also the broader international order that relies on the United States to counter authoritarian aggression. The Alaska meeting and Trump's empty threats. Trump's handling of a recent meeting with Putin in Alaska further illustrates his weakness on the global stage. Leading up to the meeting, Trump repeatedly promised very severe consequences if Putin did not agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. However, the meeting concluded with no concessions from Putin, who was reportedly treated to a red carpet reception. Trump's failure to follow through on his threats underscores a recurring pattern. His bold rhetoric is rarely backed by action. This was evident in his unfulfilled promise to end the Russia-Ukraine war on day one of his presidency, a claim that has proven hollow as the conflict continues unabated. The absence of consequences for Putin stands in stark contrast to the pressure Trump has exerted on Zelenskyy. In a Truth Social post, Trump suggested that Zelensky's refusal to negotiate on Russia's terms is prolonging the war, ignoring the fact that Putin's regime could end the conflict by withdrawing its forces. This dynamic was further highlighted by a Russian missile strike on Zaporizhia, Ukraine, shortly after the Alaska meeting. Zelenskyy described the strike as a demonstrative and cynical act, timed to underscore Putin's confidence in Trump's inaction. The strike, which killed 3 people and injured 20, including children, underscores the human cost of Trump's appeasement. Zelensky's response, and the international community. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has responded to Trump's pressure with resilience and clarity. In a video posted on X, Zelenskyy highlighted the Russian strikes on Zaporizhia, Kiev, and Odessa, which killed 7 people, including a 1.5-year-old girl, and injured dozens. He emphasized that these attacks were deliberate, designed to exploit the timing of his upcoming meeting with Trump and European leaders in Washington. Zelenskyy's post underscored the need for a unified international response to Russia's aggression, calling for dignified peace and true security. The Washington meeting, which includes leaders from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, and the European Union, as well as NATO representatives, is a critical opportunity to counter Trump's narrative. European leaders have consistently supported Ukraine, with the EU providing over €99 billion in aid since the war began, according to the European Commission. Their presence in Washington signals a commitment to multilateralism and collective security, values that Trump's unilateral approach undermines. Democrats must amplify Zelenskyy's message and advocate for continued support for Ukraine. This includes pushing for additional sanctions on Russia, which have already reduced its GDP by 3.5% in 2024, according to the International Monetary Fund. By increasing economic and military pressure on Putin, the international community can force Russia to reconsider its aggression, a strategy that contrasts sharply with Trump's appeasement. The broader implications for American democracy. Trump's actions have far-reaching implications for American democracy and global leadership. His willingness to parrot Putin's disinformation about mail-in voting signals a dangerous vulnerability to foreign influence. This is particularly concerning given Russia's history of election interference, as documented in the 2019 Mueller report, which detailed Russian efforts to manipulate the 2016 U.S. presidential election. By amplifying Putin's narrative, Trump not only undermines public confidence in elections, but also invites further foreign meddling. Moreover, Trump's attacks on mail-in voting and voting machines are part of a broader effort to suppress voter turnout. Mail-in ballots have been critical in increasing voter access, particularly for elderly, disabled, and rural voters. In the 2020 election, over 65 million Americans voted by mail, according to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, helping achieve the highest voter turnout in over a century. Eliminating this option would disproportionately disenfranchise Democratic-leaning constituencies, a tactic that aligns with Republican efforts to pass restrictive voting laws in states like Georgia and Texas. The Democratic Party must respond with a robust defense of voting rights. This includes advocating for federal legislation like the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would restore protections against voter suppression. It also requires a grassroots mobilization to educate voters about the safety and importance of mail-in voting, countering Trump's disinformation with facts. A call to action for Democrats as Democrats. We cannot afford to be complacent in the face of Trump's assaults on democracy and international stability. His alignment with Putin and attacks on election integrity demand a unified response. We must hold the line by protecting voting rights. Advocate for federal and state policies that expand access to mail-in voting and safeguard election infrastructure. This includes supporting organizations like Fair Fight, which combat voter suppression. Supporting Ukraine. Push for continued military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, as well as stronger sanctions on Russia. Democrats in Congress should work to secure additional funding and counter Trump's narrative of appeasement, countering disinformation. Amplify fact-based narratives about election integrity and foreign policy. This includes leveraging platforms like YouTube to reach voters with clear, compelling messages about the stakes of Trump's actions. Mobilizing voters. Engage in grassroots efforts to turn out voters in key elections, particularly in 2026, when control of Congress will be critical. Events like the upcoming rally in Omaha, Nebraska, with Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Maxwell Frost, provide opportunities to energize the base. The role of media and public discourse. The media has a critical role to play in countering Trump's disinformation. Platforms like YouTube, with over 2 billion monthly users, are powerful tools for shaping public opinion. By producing content that exposes Trump's lies and highlights the human cost of his policies, we can reach millions of Americans. This includes sharing Zelensky's videos of Russian strikes and amplifying the voices of European leaders who stand with Ukraine. Public discourse must also focus on the moral dimension of Trump's actions. His willingness to align with Putin, a leader responsible for war crimes, and to undermine American elections is not just a policy failure, it is a betrayal of American values. Democrats must frame this as a fight for the soul of the nation, emphasizing the need to uphold democracy, support allies, and resist authoritarianism. The path forward, the road ahead, will not be easy. Trump's rhetoric and actions are designed to divide and destabilize, both domestically and internationally. However, Democrats have a strong foundation to build upon. The Biden administration's support for Ukraine, including the deployment of advanced weapon systems like HIMARS, has helped Ukraine reclaim territory and resist Russian advances. Similarly, Democratic-led efforts to protect voting rights, such as the passage of the Electoral Count Reform Act in 2022, have strengthened the resilience of our electoral system. We must also draw inspiration from leaders like Zelenskyy, who have shown courage in the face of overwhelming odds. His refusal to capitulate to Russian aggression is a reminder that democracy is worth fighting for, whether in Kyiv or Washington. By standing with Ukraine and defending our electoral process, we can honor the sacrifices of those on the front lines and ensure that America remains a beacon of freedom.